And here I am in Times Square. Not exactly.
And I'm not.
There you go.
He's not either.
I'm not?
You're not.
Then what's this?
And I have the same thing and I can't get it to work. So next time, maybe.
All right. Well, next time
we got thrown out of the studio for being raucous and obnoxious.
Okay.
No, we didn't. We just couldn't make the schedule this time. So here we are.
We are so eager to tell you about these shows that we're going back and doing it on Zoom. And
that's right. We're Zooming just because.
We're going to start with Back to the Future, the musical. Of course, Back to the Future is an iconic film series. And it is now on Broadway. The first film has now been made into a musical. And straight movies, I should say, that have been made into Broadway musicals have a very mixed track record. On the one hand, there's My Fair Lady, which is really based more on the movie of Pygmalion than the play. And it is arguably the greatest musical ever. And you also have Hairspray and Legally Blonde. On the other hand, there's pretty much every other film adaptation that's ever been tried as a Broadway musical. Back to the Future lands in the former category. This is, of course, the story of a teenager, Marty McFly, who via a tricked-out DeLorean, set up by his neighbor and friend, Doc Brown,
goes back 30 years into the past,
runs into his parents, who are now teenagers, must figure out a way to get back to 1985 and to make sure his parents fall in love, or he will be forever erased, I should say.
He has to make sure that his mother doesn't keep hitting on him, too.
Yeah, that too. That's a problem. The story sticks fairly close.
Well, that's because he's so much cuter than his father.
Well, he is. Casey Likes, whose breakout role should have been the musical adaptation of Almost Famous, now has his breakout role, easily stepping into Michael J. Fox's puffy jacket. And then you have Roger Bart as Doc Brown. I will tell you, Christopher Lloyd is such a hard act to follow, but if there's anyone who could do it, it's Roger Bart. I will say that it took him a little while for me to get to accept him in the role, because Christopher Lloyd just leaves such a strong impression. But in the second act, he sings one of the score's better songs about dreamers, and he had me.
Well, I didn't have any trouble with Roger Bart. I went right with him from the very beginning because he was so crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
it just worked for me. But
Mm-hmm.
He and Hugh Coles, who plays the father, are from the British cast as well. They've done this show a lot.
Hugh Coles as the father. He is a nerd's nerd. A guy that people literally put kick me signs on. He lets everybody step over him. He won't stand up for himself. And in fact, even when we first meet him in 1985, he is still being bullied by Biff, who is the definite villain in this piece, but beautiful.
Well, in 1985, isn't
Hackman
boss?
I'm sorry?
In 1985, isn't Biff his boss? Doesn't he work for
Yes,
Biff?
Yes. And he works for Biff because George has been doing all of Biff's work for him going back to high school. One of the things I loved about the movie was the quaintness and the comparisons, things that Marty had to get used to in 1955 versus 1985. Ironically, now 1985 is further away from where we are than 1955 is. So we have to get used to both the quaint 80s and the quaint 50s, but it retains some of the cleverer gags from the film. There are also a lot of Easter eggs in there pertaining to the future. The score by Alan Silvestri, who wrote the score for the movie, which is why you'll hear the movie theme throughout the evening. And Glenn Ballard, I have to say, is serviceable, but not much more. It's the weak link in this chain, although there are some very good numbers. One of them, as I mentioned, sung by Doc Brown. The others sung by Giovanni Ribisi, who is the once and future mayor. Marty sees him in 1955. He's a young black man who's sweeping up a soda shop. And he says, "Oh, wait, you're going to be mayor." He says, "Yeah, what a great idea." And
By the way, Jelani Ramey also plays Marvin Berry as the leader of the band that Marty McFly
Right.
plays with at the dance.
Yes. And I should mention that Johnny B. Good and Power of Love are both included in the score.
Well, I had a wonderful time on opening night because not only is Power of Love in the story, two other Huey Lewis songs are in the thing as well. And they brought out everybody because it was opening night, and they brought out Huey Lewis, and I adored Huey Lewis.
They brought out Christopher Lloyd. Michael J. Fox was in the audience. I like the choreography from Chris Bailey. They don't do the skateboard scene where Biff is chasing Marty. Marty's on a skateboard, Biff is in his car. Here they have a chase scene around the high school, and it is done with Keystone Cops hilarity. I like John Rando's direction. Some of the special effects, I'll let Leslie touch on the ones she didn't like, we've seen before, but many of the others, the process of the car going through the future really had me on the edge of my seat. I enjoyed the story. It holds up so beautifully. The characters, the performances, the dancing. Somehow there's this chorus that appears, and Marty says, "Wait, where are all these people coming from?" And Doc says, "I don't know. They just appear every so often."
But they're obviously in his head. These are characters that come out to help him. They're a Greek chorus or a robotic chorus of some kind, and they follow him around because he's always thinking.
Okay, that's one explanation. My assumption is that they're from an alternate timeline and they somehow phase in and out of
and why would they do that? They only do that around a Doc. That's the point. Okay, never mind. It's like,
you know what? I'm not an expert in time travel.
Oh, well, okay. I
do know what I like about the theater, and I liked this show very much.
I know you did. I think whenever anybody takes on a show that has a background that comes from another source material, you're constrained by that in some way. John Rando is a director I know and am very fond of, but this one, I mean, it's a big show. It's the worst opening number I've ever seen because it's the introduction to Marty McFly, and he's just one of the guys. I didn't know which one he was until everybody else moved away and he was left alone. I thought that was not a great thing to do. He was not just one of the guys. He was, you know.
But the character is quickly established.
The thing that I didn't care for was the fact that the DeLorean, which I loved and am waiting desperately to have before I go. You know, I'm an elderly person these days, and I want to see a car with doors like that for real. But it had to go and fly like Chitty Chitty Bang Bang over the audience, you know, and Chitty Chitty Bang Bang did it better. So
actually, I think Chitty Chitty Bang Bang was a better musical, and yes, it did fly better. I predict, however, that Back to the Future will have a much better future on Broadway than Chitty did. Chitty deserved much better than it got.
Okay,
and I will give this show 4.5 playbills out of 5.
I will give it 3 1/4, and that's very generous on my part.
And then I'm afraid we're out of time, so we have to make like a tree and get out of here. When you go to the theater, look for Leslie and me, us too.
On the aisle. Make like a tree. I don't get that.
Back to the Future.
Oh, okay.
Biff's line. Make like a tree and get out of here.
Okay.
I don't know. A used car, huh? Looks like it's got about 3 million miles on it, and all this stainless steel. Great Scott! Can this thing really do 88?
Trust me.
All right, I'll take it for a test drive. The Winter Garden Theater on Broadway. I'll be back in no time.
I doubt it. I think you're going to be at the Winter Garden for a long time.